Silence had never felt so loud. 12 species sat in judgment. Their representatives filled the ancient chamber like living monuments to power. Each throne rose higher than the last, carved from metals and crystals found only on their homeworlds. For 9,000 years, this council had decided the fate of every civilization in the galaxy. They had ended wars with a word. They had erased species with a vote. Today, they would erase humanity. Ambassador Daniel Webb stood alone on the speaking platform. He was 53 years old, gray at the temples, tired in his bones. Behind him, through the massive viewing window, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black. His homeworld, his people, all of them waiting to hear what the council would decide. High Arbiter Soren of the Seraph rose from the central throne. His species had ruled this council since its founding. They were tall, elegant, with skin like polished silver and eyes that held no warmth. When Soren spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. Humanity, you have been among us for 50 of your years. In that time, you have expanded faster than any species in recorded history. You have developed weapons that concern us. You have bred at rates that alarm us. You have shown a capacity for violence that frightens us. Daniel said nothing. There was nothing to say. Every word was true. We have debated your fate for 3 standard cycles, Soren continued. Some argued for restrictions. Others demanded your destruction. In the end, we chose mercy. The word hung in the air like poison. You will surrender all territories beyond your home system. You will dismantle your military fleet. And you will relocate your entire population to the Hollow Reach, beyond the galactic rim. There, you will remain. Forever. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Even the other council species seemed surprised. The Hollow Reach was death. It was a region of unstable space where gravity storms tore ships apart and radiation cooked flesh from bone. No civilization had survived there longer than 100 years. This was not mercy. This was execution with extra steps. Daniel felt his hands shake. Not from fear, from rage. 50 years of building relationships. 50 years of trying to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. All of it meant nothing to these creatures. They saw humans as pests to be removed. I request the right of final statement, Daniel said. His voice did not waver. Soren nodded. Granted. Daniel looked up at the 12 thrones. He looked at the Seraph in their silver perfection. He looked at the Moldari with their compound eyes. He looked at the Phoenix wrapped in living flame. He looked at all of them, and he felt something cold settle in his chest. You will regret this, he said. Not because we will seek revenge. Not because we will return with armies. You will regret this because one day, something will threaten you. Something you cannot defeat alone. And when that day comes, you will look to the Hollow Reach, and you will remember what you did to us. He paused. Let the words sink in. We will remember too. He turned and walked away. Behind him, the council began to celebrate. 6 months later, the Exodus began. 12 billion humans boarded ships of every size. Colony vessels, cargo haulers, personal craft held together with hope and wire. They took everything they could carry. Machines, seeds, books, memories. They left behind empty cities and abandoned farms, monuments that would stand as silent testimony to what once was. Grace Miller commanded the lead carrier, the Perseverance. She was 60 years old, a veteran of 3 border conflicts, and she had never felt so helpless. Through her viewport, she watched Earth grow smaller, watched the moon slide past, watched the only home humanity had ever known disappear into the darkness. Set course for the Hollow Reach, she ordered. Her voice cracked on the last word. The fleet moved as one. Thousands of ships carrying the last of their kind. Children pressed against windows, watching stars blur into streaks of light. Old men wept quietly in corners. Mothers held their babies and wondered what kind of future awaited them in the void. Behind them, the council closed its borders. Trade routes sealed. Communication channels blocked. As far as the galaxy was concerned, humanity no longer existed. Soren watched the human fleet vanish from his sensors. He felt satisfaction warm his ancient heart. The problem was solved. The dangerous species was contained. In a century, perhaps 2, they would all be dead, and the galaxy would forget they ever existed. He returned to his duties without a second thought. In the darkness between stars, 12 billion humans flew toward their grave. They did not know what awaited them. They did not know if they would survive. They only knew one truth, burning in every heart, carried in every ship. They would not go quietly. The Hollow Reach was supposed to kill them. The Council expected them to scatter, to fight each other for scraps, to fade away like every other species exiled to that cursed space. They were wrong. Humanity had spent its entire existence surviving things that should have killed it. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters that would have broken any other species. They did not know how to give up. They did not understand the concept of surrender. The Council had made a mistake. Not a small one. Not a recoverable one. They had given humanity a reason to become something greater than they ever imagined, and the void was waiting. The first child born in the Hollow Reach came into the world screaming. Her mother held her in a medical bay that shook with every gravitational tremor. The lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, metal groaned as the ship fought to hold itself together. Doctors worked by emergency lighting while the universe tried to tear them apart. They named her Hope. It was the only thing they had left. 5 years had passed since the exile. 5 years of death. The Hollow Reach was everything the Council promised, and worse. Gravity storms appeared without warning, crushing ships like paper. Radiation waves swept through the void, killing anyone not shielded behind meters of lead. Navigation was impossible. Maps were useless. Every day brought new horrors. Humanity had lost 4 million people in the first year alone. Admiral Grace Miller refused to let them die. She gathered the scattered fleet, forced the survivors to stay together, and pushed them deeper into the Reach. Logic said they should turn back. Logic said they should find a quiet corner and wait for death. Grace Miller had never cared much for logic. There has to be something out there, she told her officers. The Reach is too big to be empty. We keep moving until we find it. They found it on the 347th day of their second year. Leo Hart was the first to see it. He was a young engineer, barely 30, with grease under his fingernails and dark circles under his eyes. He had been running on stimulants for a week, trying to keep the sensor array functioning. When the readings came through, he thought he was hallucinating. "Admiral," he said, his voice strange. "You need to see this." The cradle appeared on their screens like a gift from a god they no longer believed in. A cluster of rogue planets, 23 in total, orbiting a dying red dwarf star. They drifted in a pocket of stable space, protected from the Reach's chaos by natural gravitational currents. It was dark. It was cold. It was the most beautiful thing any of them had ever seen. "Can we live there?" Grace asked. Leo ran the calculations 3 times before answering. "Maybe. The largest planet has a molten core. Geothermal energy. If we dig deep enough, we can build underground. Shield ourselves from the radiation. It will not be comfortable. It will not be easy. But it might be possible." Grace looked at the screen for a long time. 23 dead worlds circling a dying star. It was nothing like Earth. Nothing like the green hills and blue skies they had left behind. But it was a chance. "Begin the approach," she ordered. "We are going home." They called the first settlement Haven Prime. Leo Hart led the construction teams. They drilled into the frozen rock, carved out chambers in the deep places where the planet's heat still lingered. They built power stations that fed on geothermal energy. They created hydroponic farms where plants grew under artificial light. They recycled everything because there was nothing to waste. The work killed people. Cave-ins. Equipment failures. Simple accidents that became fatal when the nearest hospital was 100 miles of tunnel away. But for every person who died, 2 more took their place. Humanity had always been stubborn. Exile had made them stubborn beyond reason. 3 years after the landing, Haven Prime held its first graduation ceremony. 50 children who had been born in the Reach completed their basic education. They had never seen a blue sky. They had never felt rain on their faces. They knew nothing of Earth except stories told by parents who wept when they remembered, but they knew the tunnels. They knew the darkness. They knew the hum of generators and the taste of recycled air. This was their world. This was their home. They called themselves the Voidborn. Grace Miller watched them receive their certificates. She was 70 now, slower than she used to be, pain in her joints that never quite went away. She would not live much longer. The Reach had taken too much from her body. But she would die knowing that humanity would continue. The other planets in the cradle were settled over the following years. Mining operations on the smaller worlds. Manufacturing on the larger ones. A network of shuttle routes connecting everything together. It was not a civilization by council standards. It was rough, primitive, held together by desperation and willpower that it was enough. Leo Hart stood on an observation deck carved into the surface of Haven Prime. Above him, through layers of radiation shielding, the dying star cast its dim red light across a sky full of rogue worlds. It was nothing like the view from Earth. There was no blue, no white clouds, no warmth, but there was life, human life, spreading across the darkness like seeds finding purchase in barren soil. "We survived," he said to no one in particular. Somewhere in the tunnels behind him, Hope took her first steps. The first child of the Reach was learning to walk. She would never see Earth. She would never know what humanity had lost. She would only know what they could build. And that, Leo realized, was enough. The council had thrown them into the void expecting them to die. Instead, they had found a way to live. It was not the life they wanted. It was not the future they planned. But it was theirs. The Voidborn grew stronger with each generation. Harder, more determined. The darkness that was supposed to kill them became their home. The cold that was supposed to freeze them became their forge. Humanity was not dying in the hollow reach that it was being reborn. The alien ship looked like it was dying. Captain Rachel Stone spotted it on her long-range sensors during a routine scouting mission. The vessel drifted at the edge of a gravity well, leaking atmosphere from a dozen wounds in its hull. Its engines were dark. Its lights flickered like the heartbeat of something near death. Standard protocol said to ignore it. Resources were precious. Risks were everywhere. Helping strangers in the Reach could get you killed. Rachel was never good at following protocol. "Bring us alongside," she ordered. "Prepare boarding teams." Her crew exchanged nervous glances but obeyed. They had learned to trust their captain's instincts. Those instincts had kept them alive for 15 years in space that should have killed them long ago. The ship's interior was dark and cold. Rachel moved through corridors that smelled of smoke and fear. Bodies lay in corners, some dead for hours, others for days. Whatever happened here had happened fast and brutal. She found survivors in the cargo hold. 37 of them, huddled together for warmth, too weak to fight or flee. They were tall, reptilian, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes that burned with defiance even in their weakened state. "Who are you?" Rachel asked through her translator. The largest of them stepped forward. He was missing an arm. The wound was fresh, crudely bandaged. He should have been in shock. Instead, he stood straight and proud. "We are Thren," he said. 300 years ago, your council cast us out for refusing to abandon our warrior ways. We have survived in this darkness ever since. We are dying now, but we die as we lived. With honor." Rachel looked at him for a long moment. Exiles, like humanity, thrown into the Reach to perish, fighting to survive against impossible odds. "You do not have to die today," she said. "Come with us. We have medicine. We have food. We have a home." The Thren warriors studied her with ancient eyes. "Why would you help us? We are strangers. We are dangerous. We have nothing to offer you." Rachel smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who had lost everything and rebuilt it from ashes. "Because we know what it feels like to be thrown away. And because in the Reach, we do not abandon each other." The Thren came to Haven Prime. Ambassador Anna Cole handled the negotiations. She was young, only 35, but she had a gift for finding common ground between people who had none. Within a week, she had created the framework for an alliance. The Thren would share their knowledge of the Reach, 3 centuries of hard-won survival wisdom. In return, humanity would give them sanctuary, but the Thren were only the beginning. Word spread through the hollow Reach. Whispers carried on damaged radio waves. Rumors passed from ship to ship in the endless dark. There were humans in the cradle. Humans who helped instead of exploited. Humans who welcomed instead of attacked. The Caldari came next. They were engineers, builders, their bodies merged with machines in ways that made them living factories. The Council had exiled them 200 years ago for creating weapons deemed too powerful for lesser species to possess. They arrived in Haven Prime with dying ships and empty stomachs, and they offered their skills in exchange for a place to belong. Then the Vornex. They were empaths, pale creatures with too many eyes and skin that shifted colors with their emotions. The Council had tried to force mental conditioning on their species, to control their abilities, to make them obedient tools. When they refused, they were cast out. They had been wandering the Reach for a century, slowly going mad from isolation. Anna Cole welcomed them all. She built the Void Compact on a simple idea. Everyone had value. Everyone had something to contribute, and no one would ever be thrown away again. Point 7 species signed the founding document. Humans, Thren, Caldari, Vornex, 3 others whose names could not be pronounced by human tongues. All of them broken, all of them forgotten, all of them determined to build something that would last. We are not the same, Anna told the gathered representatives. We do not look the same. We do not think the same. We do not believe the same things. But we share one truth that binds us together stronger than any chain. She paused, looking at the faces around her. Scales and skin, metal and flesh, eyes of every color and shape. The council decided we were worthless. They threw us into the dark to die. We did not die. We found each other. And together, we will prove them wrong. The compact grew slowly at first. Trust was difficult. Old habits were hard to break. Species that had been alone for centuries did not easily learn to share, but humanity led by example. They gave more than they took. They helped before they were asked. They treated every species as equals, not because it was strategic, but because they believed it was right. The Thren taught humans how to fight in zero gravity. The Caldari upgraded human technology by 2 centuries. The Vornex created communication networks that worked across impossible distances. Each species brought something unique, something valuable, something that had been wasted in their years of isolation. Together, they were becoming something the Council had never imagined possible. Not a collection of refugees, not a dying remnant, but an alliance, not a family. And in the cold depths of the Hollow Reach, that family was just beginning to discover what it could become. 30 years after the exile, a Seraph scout ship crossed into the Hollow Reach. It was a routine mission. The Council sent probes into the Reach every decade to confirm that the exiled species were still dying. They expected to find wreckage and corpses, the final proof that their judgment had been correct. What they found made them flee in terror. The scout emerged from unstable space near the cradle's outer boundary. Its sensors immediately screamed warnings. Ships everywhere. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Military vessels bristling with weapons. Cargo haulers the size of small moons. Stations that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. And in the center of it all, a world wrapped in light. Haven Prime, no longer a desperate underground colony, but a gleaming capital that pierced the darkness like a spear of fire. The scout transmitted its findings before the compact patrol ships caught it. The message reached Council space in 17 hours. It caused panic that lasted for months. Director Samuel Reed received the news of the scout's destruction with a satisfied smile. He was the head of industrial development for what humanity now called the eternal dominion of the void. In 30 years, he had transformed a handful of dying settlements into the most advanced manufacturing network in the galaxy. Let them see, he told his staff. Let them know what we have built. The Dominion had grown beyond anything the Council could have imagined. 40 rogue planets were now fully colonized. 200 orbital stations processed resources from the endless asteroid fields. Shipyards produced vessels at rates that would have made Council engineers weep with envy. But the technology was what truly set them apart. Cut off from Council trade, human scientists had been forced to innovate or die. They developed void drives that could navigate the Reach's gravitational chaos. They created energy shields that absorbed radiation instead of simply blocking it. They built weapons that made Council warships look like toys. The Caldari contributed their forbidden knowledge. Weapons systems the Council had deemed too dangerous, too powerful, too terrifying for civilized species. In the Dominion, nothing was forbidden. Everything was possible. Survival demanded it. The Thren transformed human soldiers into warriors. They taught combat doctrines refined over 3 centuries of fighting in the deadliest space in the galaxy. Void-born troops could fight in any environment, survive any condition, win any battle. The Vornex gave them intelligence. Their empathic networks stretched across the entire Reach, sensing threats before they arrived, coordinating operations across distances that should have made communication impossible. Nothing happened in the Dominion without the Vornex knowing. Chancellor Lydia Cross led this new civilization. She was 58 years old, void-born, the daughter of the first child born in the Reach. She had never seen Earth. She had never breathed air that was not recycled. She knew nothing of the old world except stories, but she knew power. She knew what it meant to survive when everything wanted you dead. She knew that the council was watching them now, and she knew exactly what she wanted them to see. "We are not refugees anymore," she declared during a broadcast that reached every corner of the Dominion. "We are not survivors. We are not victims. We are the eternal dominion of the void, and we will never be cast out again." The 7 species of the compact cheered: Human and Thren, Kaldari and Vornex. All of them united under a banner that represented something the Council had never understood: strength through unity, power through diversity, survival through sacrifice. High Arbiter Soren received the report on the Dominion with trembling hands. He was ancient now, nearly 500 years old, and he had seen many things that surprised him. Nothing had ever frightened him like this. "They were supposed to die," he whispered. "They were supposed to disappear." His advisors had no comfort to offer. The numbers were clear. The Dominion had grown into a power that could challenge the Council directly. Their technology was superior. Their unity was stronger. Their determination was absolute, and they remembered. Every species in the Dominion remembered what the Council had done to them. The exile, the abandonment, the centuries of suffering in the dark. "They will come for us," one advisor said. "Eventually, they will want revenge." Soren shook his head slowly. "No, they will not need to come for us. We have already lost. We just do not know it yet." He was right, though not in the way he imagined. The Dominion had no interest in conquest. They had built something too precious to risk in a war of revenge. Their empire was not based on subjugation, but on cooperation. They did not want to destroy the Council. They simply wanted to prove that they were better, and they had already proven it in the Hollow Reach, where nothing was supposed to survive. A civilization had risen from the ashes. 7 species working together. 7 exiled peoples building a future. 7 voices that the Council had tried to silence, now singing louder than ever before. The eternal dominion of the void was not just an empire. It was a monument to everything the Council had gotten wrong. That it was proof that strength came not from purity, but from diversity. That power came not from control, but from freedom. That survival came not from casting out the different, but from embracing them. The Council had created the Dominion by trying to destroy it, and now they would have to live with what they had made. The first world fell in 6 hours. Korath Prime was a jewel of the Council. 12 billion inhabitants. Advanced defenses. A fleet of 300 warships orbiting in perfect formation. It should have been untouchable. It should have been safe. The Devouring did not care about should. They came from the galactic core, a tide of silicon and hunger that stretched across the stars. Their ships were not built, but grown, twisted masses of crystal and metal that moved with terrifying purpose. They had no diplomacy. They had no culture. They had only one drive: consume. The Council fleet lasted 17 minutes. Korath Prime was stripped of life in 3 days. Every building torn apart. Every body processed into raw material. When the Devouring moved on, nothing remained but bare rock and silence. 40 years after the exile, the Council faced extinction. World after world fell. Species that had stood for millennia were reduced to refugees, fleeing in whatever ships could carry them. The great powers of the galaxy crumbled like sand castles before a rising tide. Everything the Council had built over 9,000 years was being devoured, one system at a time. High Arbiter Soren watched his civilization die and knew there was only one hope left. The envoy arrived at the borders of the Hollow Reach in a damaged ship, carrying nothing but desperation. He was a young seraph, barely 50 years old, chosen because he was considered expendable. No one expected him to survive the journey. No one expected the humans to listen. He was brought to Haven Prime in chains, not as a prisoner, but as protection. The species of the Dominion remembered the Council too well to risk leaving him unguarded. The throne room was carved from black stone, lit by crystals that glowed with captured starlight. Chancellor Lydia Cross sat on a simple chair at its center, surrounded by representatives of all 7 compact species. Behind her, through windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, the dark majesty of the Void Dominion spread into infinity. The envoy fell to his knees. "Please," he said, "we are dying. The Devouring has destroyed 30 worlds. Our fleets are gone. Our defenses have failed. We have nothing left." Cross studied him with cold eyes. She was void born to her core, a child of darkness who had never known the warmth of a sun. She felt no sympathy for the council. She remembered the stories, the exile, the suffering, the millions who had died so that this man's masters could sleep peacefully. "Why should we help you?" she asked. The envoy swallowed hard. "Because if you do not, the devouring will come for you next. They will not stop at the council. They will consume everything. Everyone. There will be nothing left." Cross stood slowly. She walked down from her throne, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. She stopped in front of the kneeling envoy and looked down at him with an expression that held no warmth. 40 years ago, your council threw us into the void to die. We did not die. We became something you could never understand, something you could never defeat. You are not our equals anymore. You never will be again." The envoy bowed his head, waiting for rejection, waiting for the revenge that the council had earned 100 times over. "But we will help you." He looked up, shocked. Cross smiled. It was not a kind expression. "Not because you deserve it. Not because we have forgiven you. We will help because we are not like you. We do not abandon the helpless. We do not throw away the weak. That is the difference between us." She turned to her generals. "Prepare the fleet. We go to war." The Dominion mobilized in 3 days. Fleet Admiral Ben Howard commanded the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. 12,000 warships crewed by soldiers from every species in the compact. Thren warriors eager for battle. Caldari war machines that had been waiting centuries for enemies worthy of their power. Vornex coordinators linking every ship in a web of shared consciousness, and humans. Millions of humans. Void-born fighters who had grown up in the dark, who feared nothing, who had spent their entire lives preparing for a threat exactly like this. The fleet crossed into council space through a route that should have been impossible. Their void drives laughed at the gravitational storms that had killed council scouts. They moved through space that had been impassable for 9,000 years. When they emerged on the other side, the remaining council species stared in awe. Ships that dwarfed their own. Weapons that their scientists could not even identify. A military force that had been forged in the deadliest space in the galaxy. The devouring sensed them coming. The hive mind that controlled the swarm felt something it had never experienced before: hesitation. These new creatures were different. They burned hotter. They moved faster. They did not flee like the others. They were coming to fight. Chancellor Cross broadcast a message to every frequency in the galaxy. Her voice reached council survivors huddled in their dying ships. It reached the devouring swarm as it consumed its latest victim. It reached the empty spaces where civilizations used to exist. This is the eternal dominion of the void. You cast us out. You forgot us. Now we are coming to save you. Watch closely. Learn what we have become. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity was leading the charge. The Battle of the Core lasted 19 days. 19 days of fire and death. 19 days of ships breaking apart in the void. 19 days that decided the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Ben Howard commanded from the bridge of the Perseverance, the same carrier that had led humanity into exile 40 years before. The ship had been rebuilt 17 times since then, upgraded with every technology the Dominion possessed. It was no longer the desperate vessel that had carried refugees to the cradle. It was a weapon of war, the devouring threw everything at them. Millions of crystalline ships surging forward in waves that blocked out the stars. Hive minds coordinating attacks across light years. Creatures that felt no fear, no pain, no mercy. The Dominion forces held. Thren warriors boarded enemy vessels, fighting in corridors where the air was poison and gravity was a suggestion. They died by the thousands, but they took 10 times their number with them. Their honor demanded nothing less. Caldari war machines unleashed weapons that had been banned by the Council for 200 years. Entire sections of the swarm simply ceased to exist, converted to energy in explosions that lit up the void like new suns. Vornex telepaths coordinated the battle across impossible distances. They felt every death on both sides, carrying the weight of suffering so that their allies could fight without hesitation. Many went mad. None retreated, and humans led the charge. Voidborn soldiers in assault craft punched through enemy lines, targeting the massive queenships that controlled the hive. They were born in darkness, raised in danger, trained for exactly this moment. They fought with a ferocity that made even the Thren pause in admiration. On the 15th day, the tide turned. Howard identified the central queen, the controlling intelligence that linked the entire devouring swarm together. Without it, the creatures would become mindless, scattered, vulnerable. With it, they were an unstoppable force. All ships, he ordered, concentrate fire on the primary target. 3,000 warships obeyed. The combined firepower of 7 species focused on a single point. The queen ship was the size of a small moon, armored with layers of crystal that should have been impenetrable. T died anyway, the devouring screamed. Not in sound, but in a psychic wave that shattered minds across the galaxy. Their coordination collapsed. Their unity dissolved. What had been an army became a mob, and mobs could be destroyed. On the 19th day, the last of the swarm was hunted down. The Hive Queen was captured alive, her crystal prison transported to Haven Prime for study. The threat was over. The galaxy was saved. Chancellor Cross stood on the steps of the council chamber 1 month later. The great building was a ruin now, damaged beyond repair in the devouring assault. But it was still symbolic. This was where humanity had been judged unworthy. This was where the exile had been announced. This was where the old order would officially end. The survivors of the council species gathered before her. Sereth and Moldari, Phoenix and others. All of them broken, diminished, shadows of what they had been. Their fleets were gone. Their worlds were damaged. Their power was finished. Cross looked out at them without hatred, without triumph, without satisfaction. She felt only certainty. 9,000 years ago, this council was formed to bring order to the galaxy. For a time, it succeeded. But power made you arrogant. Fear made you cruel. You cast out any species that challenged your view of how things should be. You threw them into the dark to die. She paused, letting her words settle. Humanity was one of those species. So were the Thren, the Kaldari, the Vornex, others whose names you have already forgotten. You expected us to perish in the hollow reach. Instead, we found each other. We built something that you never could. A civilization based on unity, not control. On inclusion, not exile. She turned to face the ruins of the chamber. This council is dissolved. Its authority is ended. Its way of doing things is finished. In its place, the Eternal Dominion offers membership to every species in the galaxy, not as subjects, but as partners. There will be no more exiles, no more forgotten ones, no more casting out the different, the difficult, the dangerous. She faced the crowd again. We built our empire in the void because you gave us no choice. Now we offer you a choice. Join us in the light we created, or stay in the darkness of your own making. One by one, the broken species came forward. They accepted. They had no alternatives left. But more than that, many of them had seen what the Dominion truly was. They had fought alongside humans in the Battle of the Core. They had witnessed the unity that made victory possible. Perhaps, for the first time, they understood what they had lost when they chose exile over acceptance. 100 years later, historians would mark the exile of humanity as the most important event in galactic history. Not as a tragedy, but as a beginning. The moment when the old order started to crumble and something better began to grow. The Eternal Dominion endured. 7 founding species became 70. The Hollow Reach was tamed completely, transformed from a graveyard into a garden. The void that was supposed to kill humanity became the heart of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. And it all started because 12 elder species made one terrible mistake. They underestimated what humanity could become when it had nothing left to lose. They learned. The galaxy remembered, and humanity never forgot.